and we'll talk for a little bit and definitely push the book, and we'll go play. We'll go home.
Sounds good. I love playing with astrology.
I know. What are we doing? There we go. We're coming to the internet. It's so funny because I have a screen here and then I have a screen here, so I'm like double watching us to make sure like we're getting on the internet, and we are. So welcome everybody to today's Eat and Greet, where I have found the beautiful Rachel Lang to come hang out with us, and I am so excited for you guys to really see some skills that Rachel's got. And so today we're going to talk about astrology and money. And Rachel, I just think you've got good stuff to offer. So thank you for coming over to chat about this.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I know you are a Taurus sun. Is that your Taurus?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I have a Taurus rising. I've got Venus in Scorpio. I'm a Libra sun. Venus is a big player in my chart, even though she struggles a little bit in Scorpio. So money has always been a real interest of mine, how people make money, how they spend it, and also looking at money in terms of helping my clients to strategize if they want to start a new business, how they create streams of income for themselves. A lot of people are entrepreneurial. And so how can you follow your dream, live your vision, and support yourself? And where do you create that balance, and what elements are we working with? So I have been really passionate about helping people figure out how to work with their charts and manifest more money and change their relationships with money. Because I think when we're talking about money, we're talking about Venus. And Venus is all about relationships. And so I think, when people struggle, and especially women or people who have been in any kind of situation where they haven't had socioeconomic power, because of the hierarchical, patriarchal, white supremacist culture that we live in, I think it's important for anyone, for myself included, who've had messages about the fact that we're not as valuable, because Venus deals with self-worth. And so when we're talking about Venus matters, there's a real relationship between the experience that we have of love, the experience we have of money, and how much we value ourselves. And so we can look at our charts and change the scripts that we've been given by these systems of oppression that have been designed to keep people down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty passionate about this, as you can tell.
Yeah, but I think it's okay. I mean, I don't know. I laugh because, this last few years I have a Capricorn South Node. So it has been absolutely brilliantly activated, and it's the fruits of where your South Node is really, very good. And I'm very strong in business and have a lovely head for it, and helping people, like you said, learn to do it and saying, oh, well, let's look at the strengths of your chart. And here's an avenue of maybe even just passive income you didn't even think about. So I do get very excited about it as well. And I'm like you, Venus is a huge player in my chart. I'm Venus Sun, and I have a stellium of Libra in my second house. So I'm like, woo, my relationship with money and people, been there, done that. And now it's showing other people, how to do that. And so it does get exciting, because when we shift this dynamic, it just is not just with money. Like we start to have people around us, and we start to be people to be around that hold a different integrity. And it's really a lovely experience. It can be a lot of getting there, but
Yeah. And so I think, so I did prepare some slides to talk about. I've been watching your channel. So I know that other astrologers bring slides. So I did bring some slides. And before I get into those, I think I'd like to just lay out some groundwork for people as they're thinking about, how am I going to invest? What economic changes are we going to see? So I think I'd like to, if it's okay with you, talk about the universal, like what are some of the shifts that were happening in the collective, and then break it down into some real personal, like here's what to look at in your chart.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay with you? Okay, cool. Cool. So,
And the people in the chat are saying hello to our.
Hello, everybody.
I just can feel all the Taurus that's happening right now. They're like, oh my God, you guys are gorgeous. I'm like, the Taurus is alive today, friends.
It is. Yes. It is alive and well. And I think Taurus is such a great, I think it's a really good balance of artistry and creativity, and also grounded, practical, stable decision-making processes, all of it's like a really nice balance. And I think what we're seeing with Uranus, and you are an example of that, I think, just in terms of, just like you said, the strategic way that you approach your business, the way that you bring people together, and also just, everything in your like you look at your background, and it's all art, it's all beautiful, lots of colors. Like this is like, that is, you are the epitome of that Taurus energy. That's just my observation.
Yeah, I think that is definitely happening. And so it's interesting, though, to, like you said, to kind of segue into where you're going, though, but to take our Taurus areas of our chart and just start looking, where are you experiencing your own economic shift in that area? Yeah. Right. So as you're kind of leading into, I know you're going to talk about the big overview, really would like to invite you guys to think about this in this area of your chart. What house is this happening in, even in a big way, in a big form, the big cycle? How are you experiencing the shifts? Because Uranus and Taurus is definitely doing some stuff.
Yeah. And I think, when we're talking about Uranus, we're talking about collectively, we're talking about the way that technology, the way that invention is helping to create progress in our culture. And with Taurus, we're specifically talking about economic shifts. And we saw a lot of this, if you look back at different phases when Uranus was in Taurus, there were new economic systems. And we're also seeing that, we also see that with Saturn, with the Saturn-Uranus transits as well, that there are new systems for the economy. And we're seeing that with cryptocurrency, for example, being a rise that's happening right now. And I think what's going to start happening is, as Pluto in Capricorn started with the Occupy Wall Street movement. It started with the mortgage crisis, the banks, the revelation about corruption within corporations and the tie to corporation and politics. And so as Pluto moves through the last few degrees of Capricorn, we are going to see more and more of those systems being shaken up and broken. And I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is, we all saw AOC's Met Gala gown, which was fabulous, the tax the rich. We're moving more into that. And I think we're going to start seeing a breakdown of, or a mistrust of corporation, and a mistrust of corporation and politics. And so as Pluto goes into Aquarius, we are going to be investing we're going to be doing values-based investing. Aquarius is a humanitarian sign. Aquarius is a sign of the independent, and it's also a sign of decentralization. So all of the people who are, starting their own businesses right now, launching their spiritual business, becoming professional astrologers, doing consulting, this is the wave of the future. No longer are we going to be working underneath these oppressive structures, these corporate entities, but we're all going to be figuring out, how am I going to individually, because that's the Aquarius theme, live my purpose? How am I going to be radically myself and contribute to the whole? And so the way that we invest throughout the 20s is going to change. And how and I think that a lot of these corporations are going to become more invested in creating, in being socially responsible, and to where if corporations aren't socially responsible, if there is any kind of economic injustice, within those structures, people are not going to want to support them with their money. So there are lots of shifts that are changing. And so how can you make the most of your chart to find out how to maximize your potential with money? So I just said a lot, Stormie, so I wanted to just pause and see if there were anything that you wanted to add or anything that you wanted to ping off of that.
Oh gosh, like 10,000 things. I mean, but it's all this, there's like so much, I mean, I'm just thinking so much about how I think energetically we had to have some Uranian energy come shake our ideas about this up first, because as Pluto does make its way into Aquarius, it very much so, no fear-based energy here, but it's definitely adapt or die. And so when we're still seeing in ourselves, in our corporations, in even in our educational systems, spaces that are not adapting to tech and are not adapting to some of this is when I start to have a little bit of concern, because I do think we are solidly being put in a position with Pluto that is, adapt or die off, adapt or find another way. But then also in the middle of that, how do we remain human? Right? Stay human, right?
Yeah. And that's such a beautiful point too, because what COVID has taught us is that if we are not taking care of those with the least influence and the least power in the whole world, if we are not seeing ourselves as a global community, everyone pays. And so I think that's another Aquarian theme. So yeah, it's like returning to a sense of humanity. And what is the connecting point? Well, it's these threads of compassion and the threads of being part of the future, being moving with the progress that's happening, but also those Aquarian themes of wholeness and seeing ourselves as being part of a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I do think too, the owning the my part of the whole. And so this is where I do think a lot of us have been taken to task, which is like, what are you doing? And that is specifically the question, right? Like, what are you doing?
Yep.
Right? And so that's a big, Leo season was real big for people. Because I think it was like, whoa, now hold on, wait, I got to really be clear on what I'm doing in the midst of all of this we energy. Because it is, I mean, I found it, I don't know about you, but it is easy too, Rachel, to like get on board with what everybody's saying and to forget to stop and think, what do I think? What am I doing? What is my space that, yes, is about the whole, but also what's mine? And this is where I think money becomes important too, because it's like, well, it's your dollar. Where are you going to put that? Like, we have some autonomy to decide that. We just need to be informed about where to do that, how to do that.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Which I think segues into, let's talk about money and our personal charts.
Yeah.
So here are some financial aspects to the chart that I just thought we could talk about and outline. And I'll go into each one of these, but I just wanted to give an overview. So the second, 6th, and 10th houses have to do with money, how we're earning our money, how we're spending our money, with what we're doing on an everyday basis, what's our work routine, and then mission, which is the 10th house. And all of these, depending on what house system you use, if you're using whole sign, these are all going to be the same element. If you're using quadrant houses, these might be different elements, but I like to think of them in that whole sign framework. Even though I use quadrant house systems, I have house system ADD. I'll look at charts in different ones,
Yes. Yes.
But I think I like for this concept to think about them elementally. And then we have the houses 5th, 8th, and 11th. And these are houses that I like to think of as being the as money in terms of how it flows to us. So it's receptivity. It's how open and willing are we to receive the goodness that's coming into our life. The fifth house being winning, the eighth house being our long-term investments, our portfolio, but also the money that we share in partnership. And then the 11th house is receiving. It's good fortune, it's luck, it's friends, it's benefactors. So we look at those houses. Then the money planets, and the money planets I'm specifically looking at are Venus, because Venus does relate to money as it pertains to self-worth and relationships and the relationship with money. Also, I look at Saturn, because Saturn's our work, and it's like what we focus on and what we put our energy to. And then also the moon, because if any of us are entrepreneurs or owning business, the moon is our customers. And then Jupiter, of course, because we can't talk about money, we can't talk about manifestation, we can't talk about the flow of abundance without talking about Jupiter. And then we look at, I'll point out today too, some of the key money aspects in your chart that signify either, like most of them, I'm a pretty positive person. So most of the ones I'll point out have to do with wealth, signatures of wealth, and people who have beliefs about their ability to make money, who see that, oh, I've got this great money aspect in my chart. It can be like a light bulb goes out where they decide, I can be a millionaire. I can be I can be comfortable. Like those messages, it's a way to distance ourselves from those messages. And I've every time I've worked with a client and said, oh my God, you have these aspects in your chart, it's changed their entire mindset about their ability to make money. And so suddenly they go from feeling like I've got to marry someone with money, or I'm struggling all my life, to, oh, that idea I had, I could actually make that happen. So it's really cool to see it, to see the ways that our chart helps us to discover aspects of ourselves that have been hidden.
I agree. And that's kind of the cool part where you were talking about how once you sit and you guys get into the intimacy, which I think is very like 8th house, 12th house stuff too, but definitely like the 8th house for me, like you get in there with somebody and you start to talk about what's available, and that energy just shifts, because I still think today the greatest fear that most people have is how absolutely capable they are. Right. I've seen people in traumatic situations just be afraid and make their way through it. And then you just tell them, why don't you do these 5 things? Because you're very good at it. And the fear face kicks in, and it's like, so to be able to open that and help people shift just into a little bit of movement is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. And you're so right. I mean, I think we're all afraid of our power. Not all of us, but I think that's, Marianne Williamson wrote in A Return to Love that it is our light that we're afraid of. In the book that I just recently wrote, I have a whole chapter on power as it relates to magic and spiritual power. And I talk about how we're afraid of the potential, the infinite potential that we have. The potential to do harm, as well as the potential to manifest millions of dollars if that's what we want to do. And so astrology can be a gateway into discovering how to overcome those fears and how to really maximize your potential.
Yeah. Yay.
Yay. Okay, so let's talk about, just go over these really briefly. So the second house is how you earn an income. It's also what you spend your money on. And if you have a Gemini moon or Gemini second house cusp, like me, you probably have your book expenses are probably out of this world. Or you invest in your hobbies and classes. So you can look at the sign that's on the cusp. And this is especially helpful if you are trying to cut back, if you're trying to budget and you're like, what can I eliminate, or what can I put a limit to? And so you would look at the sign on that cusp for information. So it might be, if you have a Libra second house cusp, you might be really attracted to art, to clothes, to makeup, to things. Well, you have Libra on the second house cusp.
I know, and correct? I'm like, she's just over here reading my mail, all of the things I'm not allowed to purchase for the next 6 months. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a way to really be very discerning about your money. But also, if you are trying to start a business, for example, let's say we'll use Libra as an example. Let's say that your midheaven is Gemini, and so the 10th house, your 10th house is Gemini, your second house is Libra, and your 6th house is Aquarius. This is the air element is very prominent in your chart. And so if you're looking for what is my mission, we're going to look at the 10th house. The 10th house is your calling. So it might be humanitarian work. It might be technology. It might be, the Gemini so it might be communications. It might be, writing. Is your 10th house Gemini?
It's actually 29 Taurus, but I have Mercury in Gemini at 3 degrees right there.
Okay.
So basically, yes.
But you might not know, how am I going to take time off to write this book when I, don't have like a backup or extra savings? And this is especially true if we're starting out and just beginning our career. Well, then you would look at, okay, what are Libra things? Libra themes are ways that money is just going to come in. And the 6th house is how you do your work. So if your 6th house is Aquarius, you might do your work in groups. You might, you might not be really good at having a routine, because Aquarius likes freedom. And so the 6th house can tell you what kind of work environment is going to work best for you. Is it going to be virtual? Do you need to go into an office? Do you need to have late night shifts or early mornings? What does that work life look like? So it's not exactly what you do. It's more how you do what you do. And the 2nd house is more what you do for money. And this might be something completely different than the 10th house. So maybe you earn your income if you have 2nd house Libra. Well, these are things like law. These are things like consulting practice, working with clients. It might be working in fashion or working in some kind of having a day job in one of those kinds of fields. And doing your side hustle that's more of that Gemini theme, having your YouTube show, writing your books, having that be something that you do on your off time or something that you're building up toward. But seeing that there are all kinds of different ways, creative ways to work with your chart to discover a financial path and a career path that both work for you. And eventually what happens is we do get to our 10th house. We always do. It's like a given. So if you have that 10th house dream and that 10th house desire, and you don't know, how am I going to fund it? Work with the 2nd house and know that because that is a given. The 10th house, I always connect to the crown chakra, like the point of connection between us here on earth and the divine. And if you're getting the spiritual download of what you're here to do, there's no way you won't fulfill that purpose. So manifestation is a given. The key is, how do you do that as stress-free as possible? And so I think that's where the 2nd house can be your best friend.
Now, do you find with people, because I do, that when it comes to this 10th house energy, I'm like, you've probably been doing your 10th house for a really long time, anyway.
Yeah.
Now you're just figuring it out. And I laugh because I'm like, my God, since I was in preschool all the way through getting a doctorate degree, I got report cards that said excessive talking. And I'm like, well, of course, I got a Mercury and Gemini, like at the top of my chart. Like words are, that's my superpower. Right out in the world. And so with other people, we look and, I look at somebody who had this really beautifully strong Taurus midheaven. And from the time she was little all the way up, people are always like, God, you are put to get that outfit. It is gorgeous. Like, you know what I mean? It is a very lush, luxurious look to her all the time. And I'm like, we've usually been using that 10th house, whether or not we really knew it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Because that is the public, that's the public face that, I know that the ascendant is really like the face that we interact with the world, but that is the 10th house is how we direct our sense of mission out in the world. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's a given. It's something that's innate. And those 10th house themes bleed into everything that you do. So let's say sticking with that air sign axis, let's say you have Libra in the second house and you have a one-on-one client practice. Well, you're always going to be a communicator. You're always going to be a talker. You're always going to find ways to take the insights that you receive or that you share in sessions and express them out. You're always going to be searching for information to help your clients. So I think it's important. I think some of us, and this is especially true for people who are really just starting out in their careers. I think it can be easy to think of the dream that we have, of like the goal and the vision of what we're manifesting, and see a disconnect from what we have along the path. But the path is they're all connected. The second house, the sixth house, and the 10th house are all connected. And we also look at the ruling planets of those houses, because that gives us information. So it's another layer of meaning that we can see. I'll move on to the next ones, but I do have some examples to show.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, this is good. And it's lots of stuff in the chat already. And I love that when people like come in and they're talking and we start to evaluate and think about this already. Because I'm a big fan, Rachel, of work smarter, not harder. Yeah. So I'm like, I get it. My little Taurus sun has a vision, but we got to use the rest of the toolbox to get it done.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Because we won't.
Yes, exactly. I know. And I think it's like, this is, I know this is hard for me too. I think there's a saying that that I can't remember. My wife is the one who gave it to me, or who told it to me, is that you can accomplish more accomplish more in a lifetime. Like basically the idea, I'm butchering it. Sorry about that. It's like we have this idea of what we can accomplish right now, but I think we're seeing it in the context of a whole life story. And so realizing that there are limitations of time, there are the sixth house chores and responsibilities, and you've got to take your kids to school, and you've got to feed yourself, and you've all these things. So I think taking some pressure off. Yeah. We have to remember that we live in a capitalist society where like productivity and accomplishment and success create a sense of personal value, but our value as humans, in spiritual beings in a human experience, our value is so much deeper than that, and it's like we can't put a limit on that. So I think so this is just aligning. Like I think that when we align our mission with our values and our money consciousness with our well-being, then we achieve success and recognition. Because the sixth house is also, how are we taking care of ourselves? How are we exercising? What daily habits do we have in place that honor the temple that is our body?
Yeah, it makes it easier too. I mean, knowing this and bringing this into the development of my business every single day at like around 2:30, I have a siesta every day. And I built it in because I knew I have an Aquarian sixth house. I don't like routine. I like to do my own thing, but that is a lot of electricity to move around with during the day. It's a lot of buzz. So I knew I needed rest, and I knew when I was going to need it. And that is the brilliance of creating with understanding your chart, is to build a life and a day and that, we're always looking for home life balance. It's like, well, just look to your chart. Just look to your chart. You can just work smarter, not harder, and create that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that you bring up a really good point. And that is, the sign on our sixth house shows us the keys to well-being. And if you have, like I have, a ridiculous number of planets in my sixth house. I have like this huge stellium, and depending on what house system you use, if you use a quadrant house system, I have 8 planets. I mean, it's like a stack. It's like a full house. And if you have planets in the sixth house, then your well-being becomes even more of a priority, because there's a lot of emphasis on that in terms of like there's a relationship between how well are you taking care of yourself and how much money you're making.
Yeah, I gotta be rested and hydrated. If I can do those things and not have a routine, then we're pretty much good to go.
Right. Yeah. So now let's talk about the 5th, 11th, and 8th and those relationships. And I like to think of these, I've actually done a lot of really deep thinking about these houses, because I did actually some research just for fun. I haven't done anything with it yet, but I did some research on lottery winners and jackpot winners, and looking at the charts, whatever charts I could find. And so I just scanned the internet, and many of them didn't. I had some with some birth times, but I was really curious about what aspects of those charts indicated winning and luck. And I noticed that there was very often the planetary ruler of the 5th and 11th houses were in strong aspect with outer planets, or were really prominent in the chart. Not always the easiest though. So so I had, a couple of charts where Mercury was retrograde. I had Mercury was the 5th house ruler retrograde, where, some challenges. And so I looked at it in terms of the 5th house it's gambling, it's speculation, but ultimately 5th house matters all relate to confidence. We have to be confident in order to take risks. And if you ever have played in a casino or anything, I'm not a gambler. I have like way too much Taurus in my chart, or too much, I'm like too fixed. I'm like, nope. But you see the people who go up to the tables and who own it. And that is a 5th house thing. And so the 5th house is the house that we look at for winning.
I'm like you though, Rachel. I have Capricorn at that 5th house, and I'm like, no.
yeah. I have Virgo on the 5th house cusp, and it's like no, that this is not comfortable for me to take that much of a risk.
I remember I was working in radio, and we would go and do these live remotes at these casinos, and then they would give us money to stay and play at their tables, they're like, here you go. And they put us up for the night and stuff. And I would always trade my money in for a more executive suite and like go take a bath. Isn't that funny? And I was like,
funny.
Yeah, I'm a little too Capricorn at the 5th for this waste this money business.
Wow. I love it. Yeah. That it's funny. I've always had like somewhat of I used to do I started my career in production, and I would work on casino commercials actually for a brief period of time. So I know that, I know a little bit about that world, even though I don't.
Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to have to send you my one and only casino commercial. Oh my God. I'm standing there. Oh my God. I'm going to send it to you. I'll send out post-it so you guys can see it. It's a whole riot.
Wow. Okay. I definitely want to see it. Yeah, I definitely want to see it. Yep.
Okay. Eighth house. Okay, I got it on track.
Yeah. So eighth house, the eighth house, I associate with the openness to receive. And this is because we attribute our eighth house to shared resources. So our partner's money, inheritance, long-term investments. Also, it is debt and it's taxes. And I've noticed that the eighth house, that it requires a certain amount of vulnerability. And depending on what sign is on the eighth house cusp, you might be comfortable with vulnerability or you might be uncomfortable with it, to where if you have, and I've seen it where, someone will receive an inheritance, then feel guilty for it, or try to spend it all, or something along those lines. And so this is something, I think, with anything regarding the eighth house, we want to be aware of how willing we are to let go of control.
Yeah.
Merging with another person, marriage, joining assets, like these are all things that freak a Scorpio out, or someone with Venus and Scorpio, or can, because we're talking about the potential for ultimately, anytime we're merging assets with someone, there's an ego identity that's being dissolved, the self independent, and a relational identity that's being formed. And so the eighth house really relates to those themes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, I acknowledge it as this understanding that I think we get so afraid as well, because in the power dynamic, if that side changes, it will absolutely affect me. And that's a spot to be. I've got Aries in the eighth house. I was like, and my money. Right? So this whole merging and bringing things together, I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And, I think if anyone has the North Node in the eighth house, this can be extremely challenging, to where it triggers all of your fear of control, fear of loss of power. It triggers everything. And very often, I've been doing this work for 20 years and professionally for 16. And I've seen this over and over again, where someone with the North Node in the eighth house ends up in a situation where they have what we might consider passive income, or they from an inheritance, from a marriage, from some investment that they've made. And so wrestling with guilt that comes with that is something that can happen, or wrestling with fear of, you have this great amount of resource, and at the same time there's a fear of loss. And so this is a theme that we can see with the eighth house.
Sure. Well, I got that Aries up there. So if any of you want to leave anything to me, I'm open and willing and ready to accept. Shame free.
Beautiful. I love it. The 11th house, just real simply, this is benefactors, it's friends, it's gifts. We do consider this a house of good fortune. And so it shows us just, if you have Jupiter prominent in the 11th house, if you have, Jupiter, if it's ruled by Sagittarius, if it's ruled by Pisces, and Jupiter's in a great condition, then money might just flow to you. This is also someone who believes in their dreams and believes that it can happen. And belief is 90% of the manifestation process. So that is the 11th house. And so the theme for the 5th, 8th, and 11th are open to receive. And luck is being confident in yourself, trusting the universe, and then being open and willing to let it flow. Yeah.
I'm for all of it. Yes. I'm thinking like just right now, today, should we all leave here and just take a minute to gaze at these charts and make a small adjustment, just a small pivot. What shows up even tonight?
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I think it's something that I think when we accept some of those challenges, because we all can feel the inner tension of like, oh, I'm not open to receive in this area. You know, for me, it's like, you know, sometimes I have a 6th house stellium. So that idea of I have to work hard for everything, and making a subtle shift and saying, maybe I don't, opens me up for all kinds of possibilities. So I love that idea of like, everyone look at your chart and see what beliefs you can shift about the flow of money, about your ability to live your purpose and be compensated greatly for it, about your ability to give and invest in things that really make a difference, that your money becomes a source of power for good in the world. I think that these are all things that we can see if we kind of put rose-colored glasses on when we're looking at our charts.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Money planets.
All right, I'll go through these really quickly. Because I think it's helpful just to have an overview. So the sun is our prime creative energy, and our sun is not always what's most comfortable to us or for us. Mm-hmm. It's like what we're moving into. And so it's how we shine our light in the world. It's also, if you feel stuck, if you feel like money's not flowing, go make your sun happy. Yep. The moon is your people. So it's your customers, your clients, it's who comes into your life. How do you attract customers? And so if you have a Scorpio moon, for example, then you're not going to want to be up on social media just talking about surface stuff. People are going to be drawn to you because you are passionate, because you go deep. So we want to live into our moons, but we don't want to get stuck there.
Yeah.
It's also what we most need. And so this goes back to self-care. And so if we're not getting those needs met, we're going to unconsciously draw them into our lives.
Yeah. Or flee. That's the other thing I think is that we flee, like whether it's a relationship or money or the relationship with work, if our moons are not fed, we flee.
Yeah.
You know?
True. Yeah. Yeah. Saturn is our work, and it's often what we do for work. It's what we resist because it feels like hard work, but it's ultimately like what we feel like we need to perfect and become a master of. Saturn is also our limiting beliefs, and those limiting beliefs around money and around resources. And so whatever sign your Saturn is, you want to go toward it. You want to embrace it. And an example I give of this, and because it will open up for you money, it'll open up financial, opportunities. And an example I use of this is Oprah's chart. Because yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And actually, let's see here if I can, I have it right here. And we can just take a quick look at it.
And I'll just say that, like, I've talked about this in 1,000 interviews we've had on this channel, but I can't stress it enough. I have Saturn in Libra retrograde in the 2nd house. And I was absolutely convinced I was going to end up having to marry some old guy, have a whole bunch of babies to be secure. And that was going to be what it was. And I stopped and turned and ran right at Saturn and said, I don't think that's what you're saying. What are you saying? And when me and Saturn got in alignment, I launched an entire business that has turned into something way different.
Amazing, amazing. Wow. And I'll share too, just like my own personal story. I have Saturn in Leo in the fourth. I just gave away my age. But
That's okay.
I have Saturn in Leo in the fourth, and Uranus is square it right now. But I did not want to be on social media. I was like hiding, like, just don't anybody look at me. I'm, like scared of the spotlight, because of family stuff. And then as soon as, actually it was just within the last couple of years when I said, wow, I have some things I really want to say to people. I'm so creative. I have all this creative energy, and like no one sees me. And so then it was like, okay, I got to move toward my Saturn. And it's like, you feel more purposeful, you feel more, you just feel more aligned. And Oprah, you will see here, has her Saturn right up here in Scorpio. Now, Oprah was, I have just so much respect for her. I think she's done so much for the spiritual world, but she was the first one, or one of the first people who talked about sexual abuse, who talked about psychology, she had trans people on her show before that was even a thing, when they were still being called cross-dressers, when no one really had a context for the fact that we could have fluid gender expression. She was talking about things that were pushing the envelope in a very Scorpio way. And she faced a lot of criticism for it, but the more she went into it, the more then she became this force of transformation in the world. And there we go. We have the Saturn in the 12th house, Saturn ruling the second house. So I think this is a really good example of a chart where walk towards your Saturn, embrace your Saturn, love your Saturn.
Just go get it. Saturn's it's nice. A conversation with Saturn is nice, I think, because it doesn't really mince a lot of words, right? It's like this, here's the things. And you're like, yeah, but I think it's, and Saturn's like, it's not, it's this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Then Venus is our self-worth. It's our personal value. It's also a pleasure. And I think it's really important that we connect pleasure with money. Do we love what we do? And if you are in that process of building your dream and doing a day job, how can you bring joy? How can you bring pleasure into that experience? And you'll notice, like, anytime I've worked in a corporate office, people bring in cake at 3 p.m. or donuts, or, and like, this is a way that we bring Venus, because Venus is carbohydrate, Venus is sugar. This is a way that we bring Venus into our work life. Mm-hmm. Venus is also magnetic. She is the attractor. And so when we're talking about like magnetizing money, manifesting, it's part what we do, Saturn, and it's part what we draw into our lives, which is Venus. And so Venus and Jupiter both relate to manifestation. And that leads us to Jupiter. So Jupiter is what we believe about money, our expectations, but Jupiter is also our talents and skills. And so very often you'll see people who work in ways that work in fields that relate to their natal Jupiter placement, or work in a very Jupiterian way, whatever the sign their Jupiter is in. Jupiter is opportunities, and especially Jupiter transits can open things up for us. But Jupiter also is where we get overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Then Jupiter's got a lot to give.
Yes, very generous.
I teach that Jupiter really wants you to have the wisdom, but not every Jupiter transit is comfortable, because to get wisdom, you had to go have the experience.
Totally.
You got to go out and get it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that can be one of the hardest things. Like, you go through a Jupiter transit and you're like, something good should be happening. And it's like, but what are you doing to open those doors? Before a Jupiter transit, I tell my clients a year before, you need to be getting your pitch ready, getting your, I work with a lot of creatives. So it's like, write your script, get your, whatever it is that you want to be manifesting in your life in a year from now, that door is going to open. So be prepared now. Because those Jupiter transits can come and go and you're like, oh, wait, what happened?
Yeah. Or they're like, yeah, why isn't anything happening? I'm like, oh no, it is.
Yeah.
It is. That thing you don't like, it's working. I promise. You're developing some wisdom behind that. Don't worry. These planets are always helping to kind of get us in that vibration. So it's happening. Don't you worry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also say too, that events aren't just things that happen to us. Sometimes an event is meeting someone who changes your life and you don't realize it at the time. You just hand your business card to someone. That could be a Jupiter experience. So I think we need to also just be really graceful with Jupiter, who's just trying to help us out.
I know. It's like, be nice to the big guy.
Yeah. Then part of fortune. We can't talk about money without talking about the part of fortune. And this is something that I have seen over and over and over again. And I've looked at hundreds of charts with relation to money. The part of fortune is this little point that packs a big punch. And when we have outer planet transits to the part of fortune, or significant progressions to the part of fortune, then we see opportunities for success. We see this over and over and over again with, people who sell businesses like Elon Musk, with Tesla. We saw with Jeff Bezos when he started Amazon, like hundreds of examples of times when the part of fortune a part of fortune indicates like what we're here to fulfill. So it shows like where we find prosperity, where we find success, where we find well-being, but transits and progressions to the part of fortune are money-making opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got Pluto on my part of fortune right now.
Hey, that's great. That's great. This is just a saying that, people ask, like, it's Saturn in the second house. I have a lot of clients who are like, am I just doomed? No, not at all. You work with that. Your mindset, your attitudes, your enthusiasm make all the difference.
And this idea that to be financially successful looks like this, I think that's something that's so personal to people. Like, we have to get rid of this idea that it looks like what it looks like for that person over there. You know what I mean? Because that may not be what's actually the situation in your life. And just because we do have these signatures of wealth, or we take actions that do allow wealth to come to us, not everybody is supposed to be a millionaire. Right? That is simply the situation. Some people are supposed to create really big lives with very little money. And so, I think nurturing this understanding as well, that I'm like, what if your insides could just feel free?
Yeah.
Feel free of economic insecurity, regardless of what that number is. Mm-hmm. That maybe, is the signature that we also want to make sure to be motivating as we're talking about wealth. Because it just doesn't mean the same thing for everyone, I don't think.
I agree with you 100%. And I think, as we move more as Pluto enters Aquarius, we are going to start seeing more and more of a shift out of capitalist mindset. And we're also going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of social change too, that where power systems that have been out of balance are going to start being balanced. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be touch and go. It's going to be up and down. This country here has our Pluto return coming up starting next year. There's going to be a lot of turbulence that leads us to creating new ways of conceptualizing power and money and personal value. But I think that and I think we'll also be separating economic value from personal value, personal power. But that's it's a long process that we are in the middle of right now, or starting right now. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think if we can all just disconnect from what the world expects us to be or says who we should be, and go in to who am I? What do I value? What is my priority? Then I think that we can experience wealth from that sense of freedom, like you were just saying. Yeah.
Right. Some good signatures. Ooh, I'm like excited just looking at them.
Yep. So these are, I think for all of you, just look at your chart and see like what are these, do you have any of these combinations? And sometimes an opposition or square can be as beneficial as a trine or a sextile. And especially when we're looking at Pluto and Jupiter, or when we're looking at Jupiter and Neptune. I'm pretty sure it's Warren Buffett who has Jupiter opposite Neptune, but don't quote me on that. I think he does, and I could be totally wrong about that. So we'll just pretend like I didn't say.
We'll just roll with it.
Yeah. So that is what I have. That is it.
Absolutely brilliant. And this is like this. It was like nicely put together, first of all, and very clear. So we can each just go out, grab that chart and start taking a look and beginning that exploration. And even if you're new here, these are some good, just visual things that you can just take on right away and start to consider. You don't have to know everything about all of the aspects. You can even just consider, which signs are on the cusp of that second, 6th house, 10th house, and how can you work with those? So brilliant stuff. I'm not surprised at all. And you have a book coming out.
Yes, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, it's really pretty. Can I show it?
Yes, please show it.
Okay, it's so pretty. I my publisher managed all of it, but it's illustrated, and this just makes my Taurus rising so happy. So it's modern day magic. 8 simple rules to realize your power and shape your life. So it's really about how do we embody our spiritual power. And there's a section on working with astrology, magical astrology as well. So.
Oh my gosh. So we'll make sure that we put the link below this video so that you guys can get that book. And Rachel has tons of work, and I'll make sure her website is down below as well. You're speaking, you're all over. You're on the speaking and being out here trail. So no more hiding for you.
Yes. And also I am teaching a class for like looking at business success, entrepreneurship, and astrology. So if anyone wants to find out more about that, it's we go really in depth with a lot of these money things.
Oh, brilliant. And is that just at your website, or do they need to go someplace different?
Astrologyforcreatives.net, but it's at my website too.
Okay, I will make sure that is below this video, you guys. Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stormie.
Coming over. Good luck with the book. I know that I'll be seeing you and talking to you, but good luck with the launch.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, you guys, it was good to sit with you, be with you for a little bit today. So make sure you like this video, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully you heard something today that's worth the time you took to show up. And hopefully you brought your little mug so that we could share in that experience as well. So I look forward to seeing you guys next time, where we will have Dustin Cormier over. So we'll see you guys next week.